Difference number 1. Wild yeast compared to commercial yeast. Ah yes, sourdough starter is made with good bacteria and wild yeast, naturally found in wheat that is activated when combined with water. But this yeast is not processed, therefore it contains and retains all of its nutrients. Commercial yeast is fermented from a nutrient source like molasses, processed on a large scale before being dehydrated. And difference number 2 is probably the big one, folks. Yes, it is. Here it is. It is time. Yes, time is the biggest factor in difference between commercial yeast and sourdough. Sourdough requires a lot more time involved because you have to have a starter, which, if you make your own, can take 1 to 3 weeks. And before you can even use it, it has to be active and bubbly for at least 6 to 8 hours. Plus fermentation time. In comparison, commercial yeast is processed, therefore it is able to be activated quickly, so you can make both the dough and the bread on the same day. Difference number 3.
Sourdough has less gluten and more digestible qualities and nutrients than commercial yeast does.
Don't ya know? Sourdough enhances the nutrients of whatever flour you use to feed the starter and use in the dough. It also breaks down phytic acid, also called phytate, which is present in most grains and beans. It is there to protect these plant-based foods, but is very hard for our bodies to digest. Often, it is not a gluten or wheat intolerance that we have, but a struggle for our bodies to break down the phytic acid in our foods, causing bloating, inflammation, and indigestion. Commercial yeast does not break down phytic acid. Commercial breads usually have everything ground together, so everything you eat that contains grains, beans, so forth, is all ground together and all contains the phytic acid. Difference number 5. Commercial yeast is gluten-free because it is not made from a wheat flour. Sourdough, which is made from a type of wheat flour, does contain gluten and cannot be considered gluten-free. And lastly, difference number 6. Sourdough is environmentally sustainable, whereas commercial yeast is not. Commercial yeast cannot be made at home. In conclusion, is one better than the other? Sourdough is by far the more nutritious, but it also takes the most time. Commercial yeast is not as nutritious, but it doesn't take as long to use. Now, how to make your own sourdough starter!
Welcome back to
Mom, make that ×2.
When you use water, you want to use something that is not chlorinated. It can be spring water, distilled water,
Bottled water, preferably not something that comes out of your city water because those are highly chlorinated.
The other thing is that you need to make sure is that your flour, when making the flour starter, is not bleached. Use only unbleached flour. Some of the tools that you're going to need to make your own starter are
These spatulas really help because they're easier to get in and out of this to scrape down the sides and that sort of stuff.
Yes, they are nice jar scrapers. I got them from Amazon, of course. What are some other things?
These?
Rubber bands. Why would we need rubber bands? So for the sourdough starter, you don't want to completely cover them because you want some of that air to escape. At the same time, you don't want to leave them completely uncovered or they will dry out. So some things that you can do is just put a lid loosely on there so the air can still get out. Same thing with these. I just kind of set them on there. I don't screw them down. Or you can take a coffee liner, put it on the jar, okay, and then just put on a rubber band, and then you have a cute little jar lid thing that can breathe but is still covered and should retain some of the moisture. You also, especially if you're making more than one like we are today, is you want some sort of label to mark each one. Right, so the first one we're going to do is our basic sourdough starter. I used the one from Clever Carrot, which I'll have linked down below. That one is what got me to this a year ago. There are so many out there and there are many, many opinions on how to make this. So we're just gonna follow this recipe, and if you don't like it, you can blame the recipe and not me. Anyway, the first thing that you wanna do is some warm water. You can use a thermometer after you've warmed it up to make sure that it's not too hot, or your clean finger.
No warmer than 110 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yep, feels good. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and pour in the water.
Okay. Yeah.
Good. Another quick note with that is that especially when it's wintertime outside, to feed your starter, something to really help it get active when it's cold outside is to set it in a warm place, like on top of your fridge or in your microwave, not turned on, or in your oven with the light on. So
do not leave your starter in the oven with the oven on. Thank you.
To help keep it warm. Okay, the next thing that we need is half a cup of flour. She's gonna do a 1/4 cup of bread flour. And then a 1/4 cup of whole wheat flour. Okay, and then you're just gonna mix it.
Oh, it's like clumpy.
And if you notice that it's a little clumpy because we added a little bit extra flour, guess what? We just want to add a little bit more water to it.
Hydration has to do with the ratio of water and flour that you feed your starter with. When you feed your starter with an equal measurement of water and flour, that is considered 100% hydration. The more water you add, the more hydrated your starter will be, but it will also be weaker. It can rise faster, but not for as long.
Yep, that's probably good. Okay, you want the consistency to be between somewhere of cake batter and cookie dough, more so on the cake batter.
What happens if you put too much water?
So if you put too much water, you want to counteract it by
More flour.
a little bit more flour. Yep, a teaspoon, tablespoon at a time.
So you could end up
Okay,
with
we're getting there. We're gonna need a little bit more water.
Camera person, can you pass the water?
Thank you, camera person. Okay, we're just gonna. And at the same time, while she's doing that, I'm gonna go ahead and feed my starter. I didn't discard. Guess what? You don't have to discard
This does not go in there. Every
every time. Sometimes you can just go ahead and add some flour, add the water, mix it in with all the... And as long as it doesn't overflow, which this one might, but that's okay, then it'll be just fine. The biggest thing is,
Do not stress. Do not allow this to get you stressed out.
this is supposed to be fun. It's an experiment. It's a great way to just get in the kitchen and try something. Okay, so we're getting there.
Yes.
So we're going for
more of
this kind of consistency. Okay, how are we looking?
Pretty close.
I think we're pretty close. You don't want any dry spots. Get that all down in there. Right. Hold. Okay. Assistant, would you rather stick this on it or give it the cute hat?
The cute hat.
Cute hat it is.
I'm wearing a cute hat. Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and put that on. And we're gonna leave this in a warmish place at room temperature until tomorrow.
how does sourdough starter even work? Good bacteria and wild yeast react with water, which then breaks down the sugars, creating carbon dioxide, which creates the rising and bubbles. Do I have to discard my starter every time I feed it? Once your starter is established, more than 2 weeks old, you won't have to discard every time. But if you don't, it could overflow. Sourdough should not be stressful. It is an art more than science. Art needs practice too, even with natural talent or ability. Give yourself time to adjust. Don't set high or especially unrealistic expectations on yourself. And finally, make it fun. Have your kids or your friends or your family help you with this.
Okay, it is day 4, and we are going to feed our JoJo the wheat flour sourdough. And you can see there is this dark line here, and often this line is on the top. This is called Hooch.
This mysterious hooch is a thin, dark liquid which the starter has thrown off or separated from itself. It is mostly water and alcohol and is very sour. Do not drink it. Often this is a sign that your starter needs to be fed more often or just given more flour in ratio to water.
Okay, so first we're gonna mix it because we actually want to mix this hooch in. You can pour it out if you want to, but because it's not on the top, then we don't want to do that right now. Go ahead. What are you stirring right now? What does it look like?
Dough.
Dough? Oh. Sometimes she says it looks like brains. Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, so we need to discard. Well, we're gonna go ahead and put some in this bowl. Usually what you wanna do is take half of it or a quarter of it at least. It kind of looks nice. Okay. And then you're gonna add half a cup of flour. Half a cup of flour. There you go, ma'am. Assistant. Yep. Okay, that's good. All right, 1 and then 2. Let's try to get. Yep. Okay, good. Great, perfect. Okay, then we're gonna add. I'm gonna add the water because we actually need less than what's in here. About a quarter cup of warm water. Yep. Okay. What does it smell like? It smells like that. Yep. Not sure. It does smell like yeast. and sourness. That's good. Okay, now we got a good feeding going, and we're getting closer to being able to use it for bread. Okay, now we're gonna get
A waffle.
take my sourdough, Eenie, and we're gonna stir it a bit here. And then we're gonna go ahead and pour some in this bowl as a discard.
No, how have waffles?
She has a lot of brains. That's good. Is she pretty smart? Yeah. Oh, good. Okay. I'm not measuring it. Probably should. I just kind of eyeball it. Don't come after me. Okay. So we're gonna add that in there. Now we're gonna go ahead and make our waffle mix. All right. So Zoe, the first thing we're gonna do is add our liquids. Okay. Why don't you go ahead and add the warm milk? Make sure it's not too hot because otherwise it will scramble the eggs. Okay. Oh, great job. Okay. And then the oil, I use coconut oil, but you can use whatever oil you want. You want that to be warmed up like butter. Anything that's solid at room temperature or when it's -4 out, you want to warm it up, but not too hot so we don't scramble the egg. Okay, go ahead. And then the egg.
My egg is cold.
Is it still cold? You want your egg to be room temperature, preferably. Just drop it. Yep, great, perfect. Okay.
It's an eyeball.
It's an eyeball in there. Okay, perfect. Now we got brains and an eyeball. What can we call this?
A medicine.
Just the medicine to make the brains and the eyeball feel better. Okay, let's give it its medicine. Perfect. Tap it. Great tapping skills. Okay. I don't know what that is. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and stir the liquids.
Okay.
Which looks kind of cool right now. The oil separates. Yep, okay, smash that eyeball.
The bigger baby.
Okay, great. Okay, yep. Slow down, no, just slow down a bit. We don't want to splash it out, good. We're gonna try to mix in that sourdough starter so that it's a little bit more mixed, spread out, liquefied, sure, yep, Great, that looks pretty good. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and slowly add, how about you stir while I add the flour, okay? So this is 2 cups of a mix that I had already made. Try to make this from scratch if we can.
And you say, what's that thing now?
Yep.
Make me laugh.
And made her laugh. That's cute. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Great.
It smells like waffle.
It looks like waffle mix. It should. Okay, and then you can always add chocolate chips if you'd like, or anything else.
Now.
She likes normal without chocolate chips because she's
Weird.
great. Oh, weird. Okay. All right. So you are looking more than anything for consistency. If it's too dry, add a little bit more oil. If it's too liquefied, you can add just a little bit more flour or mix. But this is the kind of consistency you want for the waffle mix. Okay, we are now going to let that sit for 5 minutes, and we'll turn on our waffle maker. And while we're waiting those 5 minutes, I'm gonna go ahead and feed my starter and keep that going. And we have fed the starters and then the kids and the family. So great morning.
Question: can I store my sourdough in the fridge? How long? Should I feed it first? Yes, you can store your starter in the fridge. It can survive in there probably for months, but the longer you leave it in there, the more sour and less active it will be. These are just my recommendations and suggestions. Do feed your starter first, but do not leave it in the fridge for more than a week if you want to use it within 8 to 12 hours after getting it out. Even if you need to leave your starter in the fridge for longer than a week, I would still feed it first, but know that you're going to have to feed it again when you get it out. How long should I wait for my starter to warm up before using from the fridge? Well, this depends on how cold your fridge is. How cold is the room your starter will be in? How long your starter has been in the fridge? In other words, how long since it was last fed? My personal suggestion would be to let the starter come to room temperature 6 to 12 hours after bringing it out in the fridge, but other people are able to use it right out of the fridge, so I guess it depends. Another good question. Can I eat sourdough bread if I have a gluten intolerance? What if I have celiac? If you have celiac, do not eat any sourdough made with any kind of wheat flours. I am not a doctor, but if you have a wheat or gluten intolerance, then small amounts of sourdough could be tolerated, especially if the sourdough is allowed to ferment for more than 24 hours. The longer the sourdough ferments for, the more sugars and gluten it breaks down. This will make it more sour though and less active. Annoying voice again, popping in to answer another question. How do I know if my starter is ready to be used? If your starter is older than 14 days, it is stretchy, with a pancake batter-like consistency, with bubbles, and floats in water when you drop a small bit in, it should be about ready. You can use it before 2 weeks, but your bread probably won't taste as good, and it won't rise as well. Winter is also the hardest time probably to do sourdough.